When you are trying to communicate empathically with another person, you have to realize that your attitude has a huge impact on the quality of your communication. Being concerned with others is a choice that you make, and so you have to actively decide that you want to be concerned with them. Really, those that are good people watchers don't have a problem with this, and they treat the other person as something to be studied, to understand better, to know more intimately and more deeply. Also, you have to give up your own egocentric interest within that communication encounter, and you have to really embrace the other person and where they're coming from. This is often described as emotional intelligence, when you are able to gauge the other person's emotional state and their attitude and relinquish your own interests. And this is not something that comes easily for all people, though. And sometimes you need to work on the skills related to communicating empathy. And though as you do this, you don't want to fake empathy. In many communication encounters, we do this because really our interests and our thoughts are elsewhere. We have other things on our mind, and it can be emotionally draining to communicate empathy to someone else, to really and truly place ourselves in their shoes and try to understand what they're going through and all the implications of what they're saying, and really try to parallel an emotional response within that situation. That is draining. It requires a lot of effort and time on our part. And Harmon described how we fake empathy through effective self-monitoring. That is really gauging our own behavioral component of empathy and making sure our behavioral cues reinforce empathic listening. However, we want to do more than just fake, because the other person can normally pick up on this, and it can be very offensive to them, and it can damage the relationship itself, not just the communication encounter that you're in at the moment. So rather than acting out empathy, we try to work out and work through empathy with the other person. And there's a lot of research actually on how we labor in our emotions. We've been focusing on interpersonal encounters, but those interpersonal encounters are not just in our family relationships and our friendships, but they're also in the workplace. And Hochschild's work on emotional labor really spawned a lot of interest in how we perform certain emotions at work. And there's a particular study that I enjoyed reading not too long ago. It's by Tracy. It's about a total institution in which people are always at work, and that's on a cruise ship. Even if they're off the time clock, they're still at work because they're still on the ship itself. And Tracy was looking at how these workers on a cruise ship, so all the crew members, through their own experiences of always having to be at work and always having to have a smile on their face and a positive attitude and be very helpful to passengers, even when they felt like passengers were belligerent or encroaching on their break time and their off time, that led to burnout and a real sense of job dissatisfaction, and had an effect on them in terms of their emotions and their emotional state. And so if you're expected as a part of your job to perform a certain emotion on a regular basis, and maybe you don't feel that way, but you're having to fake it, so to speak. You're having to go through all the motions and show all the behavioral components of that particular emotion, and maybe it's empathy that you're having to communicate. And this is especially the case in service industry, those that are involved in retail and in waiting tables and in restaurant businesses. So this is the case in especially those industries. But that's why you can find a really high level of turnover in those industries, because in addition to low pay in some cases, you also have a lot of job dissatisfaction because you're always having to fake certain emotions and perform those emotions. And it can get the best of you, so to speak. In addition, though, to what we've been talking about, Stewart, Zedeker, and Whitburn go into more detail on empathic listening in 3 specific skills, and we'll discuss those next.